Yo,
Yo, give me a sec.
how are you?
There we go. Should be able to hear me now.
I could hear you anyway, but yeah.
Your mic is fucked again.
Oh my goodness.
Is it better?
There we go.
There you go. I don't know why it does it everything. I started to do it all the time now. I'm gonna have to check it every time.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had
Fine.
sister-in-law earlier. I had to take a nap. I was so fucking tired, man. It was unbelievable. So, and then while I was asleep, the Browns season is now entirely over. So it's been wonderful.
Is it?
Yeah.
Who won that knocked you out of that?
The Bengals came back and beat the Chiefs.
Oh, that was the one.
Yeah. So that was wonderful. That was wonderful.
That sucks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just posting it on the interwebs. But we're online. So Craig is back tomorrow in the US, it seems.
Yeah, but again, his absence is a good luck charm. That is undoubted at this point, statistically proven.
I mean, we're unbeaten.
Yeah, he's going to have to. We'll have to see. We'll have to see about this.
Yeah, we'll have to. We'll have to do some serious betting to allow this to come back. Because as you said, we're at 7 points from 9 since Craig left the building. It's a tough sell getting him back in it, really.
Yeah. He's. I'm trying to think what's an interesting equivalent when he leaves the team we perform. He's like Lukaku.
He's our Antonio Brown.
Yeah, after today.
Did you see that today?
Yeah. I woke up from my nap to see these various images of a topless man jumping around the end zone. Yeah.
Yeah, good evening, Mikey and Enoch on the door
hello.
The chat. This is episode 157. For those of you wondering who Antonio Brown is for that Venn diagram of NFL and football not mixing together, he is a NFL wide receiver, so they catch the ball from the quarterback generally. He's a bit of a nutcase.
A bit.
And today he decided midway through the game that he was simply going to strip off. He took off his shirt. He took off all his Under Armour stuff. He took off all of his actual Under Armour, like the tight T-shirts, all the monitoring equipment. Everything was off, thrown into the crowd, thrown around the area, everything off, just all sorts of bits and pieces coming off the poor fella. And then psyched up the crowd as he ran off and then disappeared down the tunnel, never to be seen again.
There's the latest picture that's come out is him standing outside of the stadium, trying to get an Uber because they wouldn't allow him to go back. He's off the team completely now. They cut him before flying home with him. It's the most impressive rage quit that I've seen in sports.
The funniest thing is they then went on to win it. They were 2 touchdowns behind and they went on to win the game, which was wonderful. The poor fella clearly has CTE.
He's got something.
It's funny to watch, but I think in 20 to 30 years' time, if he gets that far, scientists with the brain that inevitably gets donated may well make it not so much of a laughing matter.
There's definitely something going on there.
Yeah,
but in more positive news,
yes, we are 2 days into 2022, and we have just beaten Everton at Goodison Park for the first time ever. They did not make it easy in classic Albion fashion, but they got the job done in the end. Albion 3, Everton 2, went 2-0 up and 3-1 up on the day. There are a couple of changes. Lamptey was out, Moda was out. Who else was out? Lamptey, Moda, and Solly March. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, because we had Webster come in.
Webster and Mwepu.
Yeah. There's a lot of demons exercised in this game because it was the first win at Goodison. We actually scored 3 goals this season. Believe that?
Yeah.
2 goals were scored by a single player in one game, and we scored a goal from a corner. So a lot of things conspired to mean that it wasn't a miserable day in Liverpool for our team. Great performance. Again, as you say, there were times where it was very worrying. In this for good swathes of that second half, I think we were just sort of messaging each other, just saying this isn't going to go well. I think we've been instilled over the last, I guess, however many games of this season, to almost want to be down to be able to come back and score that last minute equalizer or last minute winner. So being ahead is a horribly weird feeling that is not entirely comfortable, at least for me to watch.
Mikey in the chat has just put out a smasher of a stat out there. Alexis McAllister is only the third player for us to have scored 2 Premier League goals in one game. Murray and Mopé, the other two, to have been able to do that. And Alex has also noted that first time to have scored 3 goals this season, as you said. Mental, really. And also starting off quickly and well and making the most of those chances. Because we seem to either start incredibly slowly, which we've talked about way more than we should have, or the times we do start well, we sit here and usually have been saying this season, it's a shame we didn't capitalize when we started well, because we went on to only draw or lose. We did everything. I put a little tweet out with the check mark of all the things we've talked about on the pod, and us actually seemingly being able to do all of them.
Well, there was also some slight sort of tactical shifts that were different from that rather horrible game that we played against Everton earlier this season. For them, it was because of some of the issues they have with injuries. Obviously, no Richarlison, Dominic Calvert-Lewin was back, thankfully, because clearly he wasn't ready. Yeah. But they lined up in a sort of 5 at the back, 5-4-1 sort of setup, sort of with the wingers pushed up a little bit. But we came out with a 4 at the back. Hence the Lamptey dropping. So Veltman played it right back for us. Cucurella played it left back. And then we switched, obviously, partway through the game, and we moved. Lamptey came on, and we went to that 5 at the back system to shore things up a little bit. But I like it. I like when we play this sort of either whatever you want to call it, 4-2-2-2 or 4-4-2. I like when we play that. It allows us to play more direct football. We saw the fruits of that. And I also think with Mwepu and McAllister in the team, we are set up in that regard to play a lot more assertively. And it means that we can just have our players make direct runs, nice passes that go straight through the middle, and things like the goal within 2-3 minutes are what happens from that. And what we don't get is when we typically play this more sort of slower build-up play, 5 at the back, push up the wing-back style that we typically do. That's when we get these slower burn games. And it was nice to see this more direct football today.
Yeah, and on that point exactly, what was it? The 4th game of the season, 5th game of the season was Everton. And one of the main areas that really contributed to us getting beaten was the midfield. We were dominated in the middle of the park. Badly. And Alan and Decore were the same 2 there then that are there now.
They're outnumbered today. Yeah.
Totally overrun. Even the NBC commentator was astute enough to notice it, which is really rare. When someone in the commentary box can see that you are just being mauled in the midfield because of the way we set out, tells you just how bad it was on the Everton perspective. And also on top of that, as you said, Richarlison is always going to be a big miss. But the added miss of Luca Digne as well, who was sat on the bench, who's liable to be long gone from Liverpool before the end of January, I think helped a great deal as well, because at that point you were quite lopsided in that you didn't have much of an attacking threat as an opposed fullback. I tweeted about it, and people took it very strangely, but I noted that Lamptey wasn't in the team, and he had played an hour and a half of football. Against Brentford? He played the full 90 minutes, and then he played an hour just 2 days ago against Chelsea. So I wasn't bothered about the rest. I understood them being rest 100%, but I was interested to see how we were going to deal with Demarai Gray today, given that Lamptey was clearly a big miss, because we were left putting out. I think we had Dan Burn at left back and Veltman at right back last time, or Gross even. I think it's
no. We were playing Pascal Gross at right wing back and Jakub Moder at left wing back when we played Everton early this season,
and we paid for it badly.
Yes.
Well, it seems that the tactical decision that Rafa decided on was to have Damari Gray spend most of the first half attacking Cucurella on the other side of the pitch. Bizarre and great, because Cuckoo just barely broke a sweat having to deal with Damari Gray. As you said, a Rolls-Royce player that is not going to be in an Albion shirt for long if he continues at this rate. Wasn't in amongst all of the goals and assists today, but he was still just quietly outstanding, I think, in doing a job with their team. Enoch on the door in the chat says, don't know if it's just me, but our forwards seem to be really sharp at the moment. Like the touches are silky AF. It's hard to disagree with that. The something we've talked about for ages is we wish we would take that one extra less touch with extra shots, if that makes sense. Like, just don't take so many passes, be more willing to hit the ball. And it seems that, especially over these last couple of games, we've done that.
This is what you get when you play players like McAllister and Mwepu. And you saw Mwepu's touches made 2 of the goals.
Yep.
And then, 5 minutes later, he can't pass to the player 5 yards in front of him or to the side of him. Like, he's a very weird player. And he's still getting used to it. But that's what you get with these players. And I don't know if you noticed, and I think, who are we to say anything but good things about this man? But Trossard takes a long time on the ball. And quite a lot of the time, I don't know if you noticed, but he delays a pass. When there's a direct through ball opportunity they could potentially have, tends to take that little extra touch and dance around the player and then bring the other players back to build up the move. I think Trossard typically prefers to play with that system with the wing backs, where he slows things up, dances around, he's got someone overlapping him and he passes the ball out wide and starts to get into the box. Whereas if you give it to McAllister, if you give it to Mwepu, they just go, bam, let's get the ball forward. And I think there's going to be a little bit of learning that happens to get everyone on the same page, depending on whether we're playing these 2 different formational setups, because they demand different things from the players, and the different personnel that we have different results. But I think what you're seeing with the strikers having these sort of quote unquote silky touches now, that's part and parcel of the form of play that we're putting out. And some of the players that they're Mope's capable of these things. He's just not really been asked to do those things when we typically play with the sort of 5 system.
Yeah, and just to touch on the overall stats, right? That, like, I just wanted to point out, there's not much to discuss today in terms of that, because everything was very much even keel. Possession was not too far away. Shots not too far. All of it. You go on who scored or sofa score. Everything's quite evenly matched.
It's a good game for the neutral, as they were saying, and what made us feel awkward.
Yeah. I think we lost the XG by 0.17 or something like that. So not much in that either.
Yeah. Penalty
it was really,
as well, that skews it.
Penalty big time. Yeah. It was really a case of tactical battles all over the pitch, which is why I'd rather spend the time talking about those individual battles. I know that I like to throw a lot of those overarching stats out there. There ain't anything really to say that's worth talking about. So it's more worth the chat that we're having in terms of those big players. I'd rather just drop it in here so people didn't think we were just ignoring that out of our excitement. But there just wasn't much to discuss.
There's not much on there, but this is sort of testament to how Potter's learned, though, with the system that he's put out today, with what Everton presented in the last game, and obviously the squad and players they have available to them now. He obviously saw what happened last time, and I think we understood that the risk element with playing Everton is that you've got some challenge and pace on the wings. Okay, let's figure out how to deal with that. And then you've got these 2 powerhouses that sit deep and anchor their midfield, protect the defense, and then sort of build up play and spread it out wide. And the system that he played today just nullified a lot of that, or at least dampened it, because, again, to the surprise of everyone, you had a player that no one expected to really be massively involved in the game in Gordon, Anthony Gordon, be their sort of main outlet. And that's part of the way that Potter set this system up. They had to find another solution because the normal guys weren't getting it done.
Yeah, there are a couple of great little things in the comments here that I do want to touch on. Mikey said he pulled that stat from Sky Sports, the 2 goals in a game, Murray Mope and now Maka. Not true. Of all people, Mr. Middlesbrough himself also scored 2 for Spurs, didn't he? So
We don't
we're
speak
sorry,
of him
Aaron.
anymore.
He who shall not be named, who has gone far up north, and long may he play there. Marty in the chat, hey lads, quite a start to Macca's Ballon d'Or campaign. It's something we definitely want to talk about here, because it is not a coincidence. I don't think that in these last couple of games, Alex started or at least got a plenty of minutes. Alex in the chat has also noted that it was almost bad that he forgot Trossard was on the pitch today. Thus was the contribution of that entire midfield, which is something we've talked about as well at length. The need to have more than just Trossard and Mope doing something. And they did that with such effectiveness today. It almost allowed Trossard a day off to relax and not have to worry about carrying the team on his back. It was really nice. And Mr. Everly, I think that's going to be. They expect everything to click for Enoch next season. It may be sooner than that.
He's close.
He's
showing big signs, isn't he?
And quickly, coming from where he came from, he is showing. He is obviously being groomed in the same way Alexis was coming from Boca, and it's taken him 18 months to get there. Enoch is moving a lot quicker, I think, through those motions of learning and understanding the game. And he came from Austria. So, Boca Juniors would probably walk into the Austrian Premier League and win the title 9 times out of 10, you would think. So, very impressive.
Well, he was. We talked about man of the match for us against Brentford, if I remember correctly. 2 assists today. We know what he did against Liverpool. There are flashes of brilliance there. The big thing that he's missing that we hinted at a little bit earlier is the consistency, and everyone can see that. There's a number of times when he receives the ball and he's building up play and you just roll your eyes, and it's just, there was a point in the 92nd minute where he was walking to the corner flag with Mope and he just sort of just screwed it up and the ball just went out and Mope was furious at him. These are just things that you just hope he's going to be. He's a national team captain. He's played high level football in Europe. I know you say obviously it's not a particularly competitive league, but he did play European football. He's going to get there. And I'll take the weapon we have today already, just based on the last handful of games compared to what we saw earlier in the season, where I think we were all collectively as a fan base thinking to ourselves, oh God, is this another Ali Reza Jahank bash on our hands? And I don't believe that's going to be the case. He's already surpassed Jahank Bash in 3 games of contribution.
Yeah, 3 appearances. Before we get on to the 2 goals that Enoch was so important on, the second one was especially filthy. We've been talking, especially me, I've been a loud proponent of offering something different up front for players like Mope to play off of. If Neil Mope is going to suddenly find the ability to play the kind of cushion header that any top-level target man would be happy for, then maybe not. That cushion down header for McAllister was outright. Like, most of our listeners have played the game. For those that haven't, the difficulty in the ability to cushion that header down in the way he did, you cannot state enough how hard that is. My head is more like a 50p piece. I couldn't do that very often at all. That was an incredibly good touch. And the comfort that Maka had to tuck that away just shows you the height he's riding on since coming into the squad.
So I've got the highlights running as we're talking here, and I've just put this goal back on. And so McAllister's the one that starts this move, runs into the center of the field, passes the ball out to Veltman, who takes a one-touch cross straight onto Mope, who delivers that amazing cushion header. And he sees McAllister just glide past him in a split second. That means that he does that. There was no one else, really. He would just have to headed it back and hope for the best. and just finishes with aplomb. So he started and finished that move. You don't get that when he's not in the team. And you're right. You've been banging the drum for a long time at this point. That the problem is not Mope. The problem is the surrounding cast for Mope, and he hasn't really had one up top with Welbeck out and other players just not being there. McAllister on his day is it, and Wepu certainly can contribute to that, as we've seen as well.
Yeah, it was outstanding and so fast. What more can you ask for? 6 minutes later, John Joe Kenny got himself in the book. A couple of nasty challenges today, weren't there? Couple of ones that were slightly higher than the ball should have been. I don't know whether it's. I've heard. I mean, a lot of Liverpool fans on social media were just insisting that's because they're dirty, and it may or may not come from a biased point of view. But I will note that it could have just been tiredness as well, or rather just a lack of sharpness from the fact that they haven't played in almost 3 weeks. But there were a lot of them today. They were lucky to get away with one booking all game. They could have had several today with some of the challenges they were throwing in.
They could have. I think this was what this 30-something-year-old ref's second Premier League game in a sort of hotbed at Goodison Park where the fans were getting rowdy. I thought we did a good job. It's one of those ones where you either have to start showing the cards early and it turns into one of these sort of just circuses, or you just try and keep it a little bit chill, let some of these challenges go and see how that works out. I think we ended with 2 yellow cards overall in the game as a whole. Obviously, he did give the penalty after consultation with VAR. He didn't just immediately point to the spot because of that shoulder barge. Again, the other side of Mwepu, when he makes a bit of a boneheaded decision there when he didn't really need to. Bit soft of the penalty decision. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more. But I thought it was decent overall. It's more of I'll take a game where there isn't just flagrant, horrible refereeing. I'll consider this a win, even if they were playing a little bit dirty, unless we just were normally walking away aggrieved with like 3 different things. And we didn't have that today.
It feels like both sides are. Even if we got beat 2-0, I feel like the other side comes away going like, yeah, we won, but I'm still annoyed at some of the shit the ref's done. So it was a quieter performance from him, which is nice. Second checkbox of the day: corners, set pieces, making the most of them. The first kind of split second that ball came in,
I know what you're thinking.
Oh, brilliant! Let's not beat the first man, shall we?
First man, yeah.
The first man actually turned out to be Enoch Mwepu, who obviously doesn't know where he's going with that ball. He's hoping that it's going to find someone appropriate. But the touch itself to nod it on was chef's kiss. It was the picture perfect nod on at the near post that you've ever seen. And there are times, I mean, just this week, where you've just turned around and gone, what was that marking from a set piece? Neil Mopé and Dan Burn were all on they were the 2 closest people to each other at the back post. And no matter how dodgy Dan Burn in the air can be, he didn't even need to move. He just kind of
his body sort of took over and just scored it for him. But Adam Webster was also sort of standing around that area. Everton was just they weren't awake for the start of this game. But let's not take away 2 fantastic headers that created goals and 2 great finishes. Mwepu did everything that could be expected from him in that position. God knows why. And I know we complained last week as to again what day it is against Chelsea, where we had it was Mopé marking Lukaku. Well, they had Alan marking Mwepu. Alan's like 5'3", so that didn't work for them, or it would have hit the first man. But the first man was Alan, and then just great finish, great nod on. Can't ask for much more than that.
We may well have actually sent Lukaku packing out the Premier League as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Disaster
class. I love that not only did we cause a Tuchel meltdown, but now we've also their £96 million striker has basically just come out and said, I don't really like it here.
Yeah, there was a point in time where we were getting a lot of managers sacked. It was almost like a really nice coincidence where we were, I think it was like 3 in the space of a month. We played them, beat them on one of our really good runs in October or November or something like that, where we won like 3 out of 4. And like that probably is what made us safe that year. And 3 of those 4 ended up with managers being sacked. We seem to have just moved down to players now. Because Lukaku, after that game, like you said, he just came out and said, actually, I hate it here. Please send me away. So that was wonderful.
Just what a bizarre situation. But if you've got to be a Chelsea fan, just a weird one to sort of witness go down. Oh yeah, things are going all right. Oh, we've lost a few games, or we've drawn a few games. Oh, actually, suddenly, like our star player now decides he hates the club. What has happened there? What a weird series of events. And Tuchel's outburst. I know we didn't really have a chance to talk about this because we recorded straight after the game last time, but it's all the crap of Jurgen Klopp's little childish toys being thrown out the pram, but without any of the sort of charisma when things are going well. Because Jurgen, you take both, right? You're like, all right, okay, he seems like a really nice guy, but he's going to get stroppy when he loses or doesn't win. Tuchel's just a bit morose and then seemingly gets flustered. Not a good look for them. Not a good look for Chelsea Football Club, but funny for us.
Hilarious for us. You love to see it. You really do. I know Mikey's saying in the chat that we finished off Pochettino. That's definitely one of the ones that we conquered on the way through.
Mikey, and you're right. Lukaku did that interview a few weeks ago, but he followed up. He was texting Tim Howard today, talking about his frustration. So he was doubling down on it after the game. Just very bizarre. And you're not saying the Inter fans don't want it back. Here's a hot take for you. Lukaku to Spurs, Kane to Chelsea. It will never happen, but stranger things have.
It wouldn't surprise me if Lukaku stayed in England. He wanted to come back to England. He's that interview he did was saying that he's not happy with the way Tuchel's playing him. So it's more of a manager thing than a club thing.
Tuchel's not going to go anywhere anytime soon, though, is he?
No, he's not. Why would he? He's got the team playing pretty well without him. So the penalty shout itself, soft. I thought it was soft as well. Yep. On the whole of things, though, like, is it a penalty? Yeah, probably. I think my one gripe I have is I see that in 1 in every 2 of Tariq Lamptey's games in the box, and they're very rarely given. It's probably one of those things for me that stands out. Just a lack of consistency again, really. Mwepu should know better than that, but as you said, he's going to have boneheaded decisions every now and again. Thankfully, came to nothing. I'm not sure.
Horrible penalty.
Not sure if you watched one of the replays they showed after full time, because I had it on still for a little bit while we were getting to the Chelsea-Liverpool game. But they showed a penalty replay from actually facing forward, like looking at it from behind DCL's body. And I'm pretty certain that even if it was on target, Sanchez had that bang to rights, which is a nice change because it feels like he always goes the wrong way. But if you look at it back, he's got that. I think that could have been what made him bottle it more than anything, is he went the exact right way as well.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, Sanchez he's a big body, so when he guesses the right way, he's going to have a chance. So there is that. Well, not to be said about the keepers of the past. I think if Mwepu, back to the decision, I think if Mwepu had just hit in the shoulder, we would have got away with that. The fact that it went just and caught him in the back is what changed that from an old school shoulder barge where maybe he gives it, maybe he doesn't, into he's just pushed him over with his shoulder into his back. That was a bit of a shame. But yeah, hopefully he learns from that. But thankfully spared his blushes by coming back in a big way in the second half with an audacious flick for Alexis. But we'll get onto that.
Yeah, halftime, we were looking pretty comfortable. 2-0 up, everything's looking pretty good. I think the murmur around the ground was probably the same one that was going around my house, or really just what I was telling my wife, and she was nodding along. There is no way that they're going to come out and play as poorly in the second half as they did in the first, Everton. And they didn't. They started off pretty well on the front foot. And they were given a bit of a gift from Everton fan Adam Lallana with the shot from Anthony Gordon that Sanchez definitely had covered, because I'm not sure it was on target, being totally rerouted to the other side of the net. And it was pretty much the dream start, and it changed everything from this comfortable performance by the Albion into this, well, as you said, this great game for the neutrals, but an absolute nerve-wracker for us for the next 45 minutes.
Yeah, these things happen, though. Unfortunately, Lallana overall played well, but he had a couple of absolutely horrendous passes that really just enabled some counter-attacking that occurred. But yeah, this one wasn't really his fault. Put his body in the way. Just got unlucky. The problem was the timing of that. Like, you don't want to get unlucky just to galvanize their team out of the blocks into the second half. And it felt like suddenly we were under the cosh then for the next sort of 15 minutes until things changed again.
Yeah, and Alex in the chat said that we rode the storm well. And I think that's probably the best way to put it. Is my fire alarm beeping?
No, it looks like it's uncovered.
Oh, they're wired. They're not batteried. So they're over here, at least in North Carolina, they have to be like wired in to the electrical system as opposed to batteries, Mikey.
Well, when Dan Burns scores, all fire alarms potentially go off.
That is true. Yes,
it's a horrible joke. Yeah,
but we did ride the storm really well. And massive props has to go to Potter here, because it took him 7 minutes to make wholesale tactical changes when he realized we were under the cosh. Something we have not done, I don't think, ever. Potter's faith in his players that are on the pitch is admirable, and it's been a pretty consistent thing for him. Today, whether it was a case of just him learning again, like becoming more decisive in that way, or the constant run of games and the need to be able to rotate them, whichever one it was, or if it was a bit of both. 61 minutes in, 7 minutes after the goal celebrations are all over and done with, Shade Duffy and Tarek Lamptey come on, Veltman and Lallana off, and as you said, we then reverted to that three at the back with wing-backs, with Lamptey and Kukurea out wide. Duffy fitting in the middle, and Webster and Byrne on either side of him. And from then onwards, up until the goal, we weathered the storm well, but the storm had well and truly passed by that point. We looked a lot more comfortable and had really got back into the game. And at that point, either team looked like they were going to be the next to score instead of just them.
Yeah, as soon as you saw, when we heard double substitution coming, I was hoping we would switch it up and move to that 3/5 at the back just to shore things up a little bit more. So as you say, really nice to see him make a pragmatic decision as opposed to one where he's forced into it at the end of a game. Because Potter seems to, I don't know, over the last handful of games, we got into that situation where we were sort of making like 3 substitutions with 20 minutes to go, and then we'd lose someone to injury or whatever. And they were always sort of reactive substitutions. This felt like, let's get ahead of this. Like we're still winning. Let's make sure that it doesn't turn the tide. So really, really good from him.
I don't think enough can be said. And I saw it all over Twitter. There was a lot of people who I know for a fact, username wise, bitch a lot about that. And today they're all very happy. So at least they're consistent. They're all very happy to see those decisive changes being made. And not about 10 minutes later, the decisions paid off. Neil Mope, again, one of the starters of this, he ran almost the full length of the pitch, or rather the full length of that half, before bouncing back a little bit. And, obviously one thing led to another. Everton were just shocking at clearing their lines. And Enoch Wepu put together a filthy touch to just essentially lay off McAllister. And Maka will not hit many sweeter than that in all of his career. Pickford had no goalkeeper in the world saving it at all. None of them. It was an unbelievable strike.
That is one that you see unfolding, and then you go, "Oh God, that would have been such a good goal if it went in." And you're like, "Oh, well done for trying it." Like, it's nice to see it. The fact that went in, and as you say, like, there were a lot of players involved in that. It was a horrible clearance. Then even Big Dan Burn was pushing up. Trossard was out on the wing, slowed the play down, but it actually worked here because he picked out Mwepu, who I guess the funny thing with Mwepu is you never know whether he's fully intending what he's doing, but when it works, it looks amazing, and it looked amazing, and then he just absolutely cracked that into the top corner. I'm watching it go in right now. That's one that I think at the end of the season we look back on and we go, that was. It looks better than Mwepu's goal against Liverpool for me, just in terms of how it all ended up.
Yeah, I agree with you.
This was intentional.
and I have been saying this since we saw him in pre-season, before I'd even had you guys come on board. And I had a couple of people in the chat, I think at the time, told me I was like effing bonkers. I'm telling you, Enoch Mwepu, as time goes on, is going to be remembered as a Premier League level Bass Savage. You never know. You never quite know if he does it on purpose, but the moments of magic the guy produces too consistently to be accidental tells you that he's actually quite good. He's actually very good at his level. Bass was excellent at that level.
And that makes me then second guess, because when he scored that goal against Liverpool, I was adamant that it was a cross. But now, the more these things keep happening, I'm now like, maybe this crazy bastard actually meant it.
He is one moonwalk away from fulfilling the prophecy.
Yeah,
It was a hell of a strike, and Maka bags a brace, well deserved as well. 5 freaking minutes later, nothing's easy at the Albion. They concede what ended up being a really tidy goal as well.
We got carved apart there. Absolutely carved apart.
There's not much more to say really. They passed it around us beautifully, and Anthony Gordon slotted it away, easy peasy, and squeaky bum time then for the next 15, 20-ish minutes with added on time.
And here's the downside with McAllister. He was covering Cucurella come inside a little bit to cover a defender. Maka was then tasked with going out to cover John Joe Kenny on the wing. Didn't really do a very good job of it. He got tons of space to then put that ball in for Gordon to get on the end of it. That's the downside. And where you'll see potentially in bigger games where we simply still can't necessarily play McAllister just because he doesn't have the defensive positional awareness. And that's okay if he does what he does at the other end of the pitch. It's those games where he seems ineffective, and his pass completion is still not where I'd like to see it, by the way. He's for all of the talent that he has, he's not in the 80-90% pass range by any means at the moment. But if he does the audacious and he scores goals, you then deal with the downsides, which is what kind of was part of this goal.
Yeah, and 5 minutes later, Jakob Moder comes on for Trossard. And just as an example, Jakob Moder is the type of player that I would much rather have had out there than Maka. And they're the two players that can interchange and will interchange as the season goes on.
Yep.
Moder doesn't give John Joe Kenny half the time he got with Maka. And again, that's not a slight on Maka because he scored 2 goals that Moder probably wouldn't have. So you give and you take.
Yes, again, if he does the thing that he's on the pitch to do, all is forgiven. It's when he doesn't do anything, misplaces passes, and then is lax on his defensive duties. That's when he gets taken off at 55 minutes.
Yeah. There was some squeaky bum time, but not too much of it. I expected really, I expected us to really sit back and invite the pressure on, but a mixture of being able to hit them on a counter attack still and being willing to. Wepu, especially, despite how mental he was with some of his touches really late there. And Everton's total inability to replicate anything close to what they did for that second goal. I mean, there was twice in added on time where you thought, oh, okay, here we go. Let's see Shane Duffy and co get tested here. And they couldn't even loft a ball into the box. It was shunted along the ground, and Tarek Lamptey took hold of it and ran out twice. And Tarek Lamptey is a foul winning machine, so there was only one way that was going to go, and he bought us 30 seconds of time in the 91st minute that we desperately needed. And I think he did the exact same thing as the whistle went for full time. Comfortable in the end. In that last couple of minutes compared to what I thought we were going to be. And
yes, could have been a lot worse, part due to the way that Potter changed the system up and the players that he brought in to solidify things. Part of it's because Everton are not a particularly good football team right now. And I think Benitez is still the favourite to be fired. If they're going to fire him, they might fire him over this break period. It's unlikely, but the fans don't have any heartfelt sympathies for him at the moment, really, do they? He came into the club in ill circumstances too, but they're not in a good spot. They've not been on a good run. They were fortunate enough to beat Arsenal recently, but outside of that, they've been pretty terrible. They are suffering from these problems and these injuries, but Dominic Calvert-Lewin coming back from being out for a long time. No Richarlison. Gray was dangerous at the end, but not a ton of goal-scoring weapons on that team. Their standout players, Allen and Doucouré, don't really score goals. Townsend is out too. So there'll be harder days for us, but a 3-2 away at Goodison to mean that we go away for this cup break with 7 points in 3 games after the slide we went on is incredible show of togetherness and stability in this team to come back from that.
Yeah, and it already started, right? You started seeing every now and again like one of those threads pop up on North Stand chat or something pop up on Twitter of, is this the end for Potter? And we've been very vocal that no, it's not. But again, this team doesn't quit on him at all. They like the way they're playing. They like being at the Albion. This team clearly believes in what they're doing.
It's the anti-Lukaku situation. They actually want to play in this system. Yeah.
It is, and I think it speaks volumes to the Albion in general, and Potter especially, because you look at Everton, right? I know that they said that they were winless in 11, or they'd won 1 in 11, and I'm looking back at it now that they beat Norwich in September, and then they haven't won since, except for the Arsenal game that you were talking about. A lot of those winless games were losses, not draws. They take a couple of draws from those and they're sat in and around where we were 2 weeks ago. And there's probably less complaints simply because they're still picking up points like there were for us. But the losses piled on gets a lot tougher. And at this point, like you said, we've got 11 games winless, and we'd gone from top 7, top 8 to very quickly sliding into that bottom 6 if we continued careening down that path.
That was a real risk. This would have looked very different. And Alex pointed out in the chat a little while ago, we've had a lot of our big players out. We went on that 3-month winless run, and we're 8th in the Premier League. So that shows you not only how important those draws that we got at the last gasp of games, but also how polarizing this league is right now. Like outside of the Man Cities and pretty much kind of that, it's a clown fiesta in this league. And picking up a point from games, as we've seen, we're 8th. We didn't win a game for 3 months and we're 8th. That shouldn't be how that works. That's not how this game works.
No, it shouldn't be how that works at all.
Thankfully, we've got some terrible sides rooted to the bottom of this league. So,
And I think what's also worth noting here is and especially because of the conversations we've had, right? And one of those, namely, is life after Basuma. We're about to get a horrible look into what that looks like for the next month with Palace and Leicester as he goes away to Mali. The fact that the club is saying that he's going to go away to Mali and never proved it and he's going tells me that I suspect some point now in the last 30 days, the stuff behind the scenes, legal wise, something has been dropped. These things are never something that gets announced anyway. Like, they're not going to come out every time they drop charges on someone. Otherwise, they'd never be shut up. Clearly, something has, because you categorically can't leave while on bail. So someone somewhere at some point in time has either dropped something or it's been dismissed or something. Has to have been if he is going to travel out to Mali, which is great news. But I see a lot on social media, and I thought that those people were like making a great point of it. We can lose Bissouma sooner than we can lose Dunk. He is the lifeblood of our defense. We are, one of the best defensive teams in the league, fourth best defensive record in terms of losses. We are I think we're top 6 in terms of goals against. We are rocking it out there. And since Lewis Dunk has been injured, for those really worried about life after Dunk, since he has been injured, we have gone draw, loss, win, draw, win. We've conceded 1, 2, 4 goals, and 2 of those were today. This team is becoming well-rounded enough and good enough to cover for any star under Graham. And Mikey in the chat, do you still think we're in a relegation battle? No, I don't. 7 out of 9 points from the last 3 games. We are going to have a massive meltdown to end up in trouble. I'm no longer too worried about relegation after this week, which is outrageous how fast things can change. But when you go winless in 11, that can snowball very quickly. And we're now, as I said, 7 from 9, and we're sat on 27 points. Everything becomes a lot more attainable.
There are 2 sides in this league whose form table is 5 losses, and that's Watford and Norwich. And then Burnley don't look a lot better than that either. Apart from hopefully they go down so Cornet can be purchased by someone else. And then I'm still adamant that Newcastle stay up. There's already talk about Trippier going to Newcastle. We've heard some other names, let alone some of our technical staff heading over there, which I'm sure we'll get on. Again, I still think they survive despite the fact that they're in a precarious position. Can we go down? Is there a risk of it if we go on a similar 3-month run without winning? Yes, that can happen, because it's very unlikely. But not too long ago on this podcast, we were taking the piss, as was everyone else, out of Arsenal about how they're a relegation side. Obviously, that wasn't real. They're probably going to be in the Champions League now. Things happen really quick. It's a long season. Things turn around and change very, very, very quickly in this league. Suddenly now everyone looks at Arsenal and goes, you know what? Arteta's kind of got that group figured out. They've dropped Aubameyang. They've got some of the best young players in the Premier League firing on all cylinders. Odegaard looks like Modric. And we were laughing at them. And we destroyed them at the Amex a couple of months ago. Things change quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely not counting the chickens yet. But I was 50-50 on if we were going to end up in a genuinely tough relegation battle on Christmas Eve. I am far more on the lines of 90-10 now that we are not going to get ourselves dragged into that battle.
I agree. I agree.
And that's amazing. It's great. Wonderful. Love it. I would rather not be worried about relegation. Why would anybody want to be worried about going down? And we seem to have dragged ourselves out of it in the space of 3 games. Seems to be the way we do things too. We did it a couple of years ago in March where we went on that winning run. And then we did it. It may well have been March again the following year where we beat Newcastle, Southampton and someone else. And went from in big trouble.
Well, don't forget the season
6
pre-Premier
points
League
clear.
and the Championship where we were doing similar things as well with win runs and then nothing. And
Yeah.
I think where this frames, and this is blindingly obvious, but we were hitting the panic buttons. Everyone was a few weeks back. It's really not that long ago, just prior to December. Now we are a club. And we said this before. The transfer window is open. We are a club an hour from London in a very nice town, 8th position in the league, playing football that everyone respects, managers and broadcasters alike, with some really, really impressive pieces in our team. If you're a player that's looking for a move and you look up and down the Premier League, of course, everyone wants to play in this league above all others anyway. So we're already for the most part, in a very nice position to sign players. But suddenly you start to look at some of these other clubs and you go, well, why would I go and play at Leeds? Why would I go and play at Watford? Why would I go play here? We've now created a completely different scenario for us to go out and sign players, whether it be in January or depending on how long we keep this up for in the summer. That's the difference between whether you're in a relegation battle and no one cares what you're doing, or whether you're impressing and you get to a position where you're a sort of a mid-table club and you start to solidify yourself in the Premier League.
Yeah. What I find interesting here is I was just looking back. The Christmas of 2020, first match day of 2020, so 2 years ago, when Norwich were in the league, just as an example of some, where teams are at. We were on 24 points back then, and we were only in 14th. So we were way down the table. Bottom three were Bournemouth, Watford, and Norwich. Funnily enough, not too different to what we're seeing now. Norwich were bottom of the league on 14 points, which is 4 bet worse than they are now. And Watford and Bournemouth had 19 and 20 respectively. They've got 11 and 11, Burnley and Newcastle. Watford have 13. Like you said, there are some appalling sides in this league this year. As Mikey said in the chat, regardless of how badly we do, only 3 teams go down, and you can't see that Norwich, Burnley, and Watford improving. That's just some perspective as to how bad these teams are compared to most recent years. The points totals for that bottom 3 in general are just shocking.
And we talked about this before. Norwich and Watford have the uninspiring task of trying to solidify and find defenders midway through a season, which is it's not just like throwing a goal scorer in there who puts the ball in the back of the net. It's a system rework. That's tough unless they suddenly decide they're going to find the next coming of Virgil van Dijk. That's challenging. I think you also have to look at where we're positioned just from a fan perspective. Like this is a great situation that's unfolding just on these change of these last few games. I mean, God, I pity the Norwich fans. Just this yo-yoing between the league where the investment doesn't properly come in. And we've seen from even, and this was talked about on another podcast, but even look at sides like Brentford, where they don't have to break the bank. They have a solid foundation in where they can finally get promoted. They have this system where they're creating these wonderful players, specifically up front, where they can sell on, make a profit, and build something for the future. It doesn't just have to be this thrifty, we go up, we go down, we go up, we go down. Horrible. Like, can you imagine being a Burnley fan? We have to watch that team play week in and week out with their awful brand of football. Watford, you're firing your manager constantly. Newcastle, you have to root for blood money. Like, thank God.
I mean, even Everton.
Yeah.
Their owners are a bit dodgy every now and again. They've just hired their greatest rivals, one of their most successful managers in the last 30 years, and he's driving them into the ground. You've got Bielsa that has clearly been found out. Like, I don't care how many injuries they've got. That team is shocking defensively. The defending today for Villa against Brentford was comical, just hilariously bad, awful. You've got Patrick Vieira, who has done nothing of note in his managerial career, guiding Palace to a comfortable 11th and playing decent football because of how poor some of those lower teams are, allowing themselves to be carved apart by Patrick Vieira's tactical nous.
Oh, and side note, Edouard, I know he scored. I don't love the look of him. I'm not sad we didn't sign him, and he's an arsehole.
Yes, he is. He's a dickhead, big time. I haven't seen much of Palace lately. Unfortunately, I'll be watching 90 minutes of it in a couple of weeks. But I've not really watched too much of it lately. Man of the match, though, who you got?
I mean, the obvious one is McAllister. You don't win that game without he created and finished the first goal with some help from Neil Maupay, and no one else on this team scores that third goal. I just don't think. Maybe Trossard. You give it, Trossard might, but he's the difference maker. He was the difference maker today, and he really, really was. Wepu was fantastic in parts, but McAllister was the star of the show, wasn't he?
Yeah, no argument from me. I know we try and diversify if we can, but what's the point? I mean, I would go as far as to say he's been the man of the Christmas period. The impact he's made has clearly been seen all the way through. This topped it off, right? 23 years old still, remember? He's only young, and he's just topped off the Christmas period with the third of 3 games that was just superb and a brace.
I think that's what has also inspired some of this positivity within the club, despite obviously the results that have come around. Is if you think about the most impressive players that we've seen over the last few games, Alexis McAllister, Enoch Mwepu, Mark Cucurella, and Tarek Lamptey has been outstanding in some of these games too. These are players that in some instances sort of feel like new signings. Some are, and some have come back from injury. Some they're just coming into what feels like their sort of second season. That's a good sign. That's a good sign. In addition to their age, these are players that get embedded in.
Yeah. Mike in the chat, liking the look of Sanchez at the moment for the past few games. He's became really solid. Again, nothing much that was too worrying today. I think there was one moment for me where it was early on. One of the Everton players headed the ball in. Instead of just catching it, he just pushed it randomly out wide, which was really random. It just made me, like dogs tilt their head. Like I was like, what? But other than that, he was very good today. He looked really comfortable on the ball again. Like you said 3 or 4 times now this season, this is the Sanchez we just have to deal with. 90% of the time, he's going to be a very, very good goalkeeper. And he's still only 24. So at least this period of his career, he's going to be 90% of the time perfectly great. 10% of the time, he's just going to do weird stuff. And we've just got to hope that most of those don't cost us a goal. And most haven't. And that probably speaks to the fact that our defensive unit as a whole are capable of covering for those wild moments when he has them, e.g. Cucurella off the line, Lewis Dunk earlier in the season off the line, Dan Burn off the line, I think at one point as well. So you're telling me basically then that he's basically the sort of the Spanish David James. I would honestly go as far as to say he is just what I imagine Alisson and Edison were 5 years ago.
Alisson still does some of those,
and they both still do some mental things, but they do it like 3% of the time instead of 10, and Sanchez is still at the 10.
Well, if we end up getting into a position where at some point in the future Sanchez strolls up the other end of the pitch and heads in a goal from a corner at the last gasp, then he'll fully be Alissonified for me. If he can do that, that'd be wonderful.
Alex in the chat, McAllister looks like the player we expected when we called him from loan and then didn't play. Think the changing of the guard between him and Gross has taken effect. And I am a massive Pascal Gross fan, and he will go down as one of the biggest Premier League legends for us. He kept us up almost single-handedly that first year. He scored our first ever Premier League goal. He cost us £3 million. Like outrageous. He has been a fabulous servant to this club, and I believe he is out of contract this summer. If he is, and I'm right on thinking that, if he's not willing to take a pretty big pay cut, because I believe he's quite well paid, as he should be for what he's given us the last 4 years, I would be more than happy to send him on probably on his way back to Germany, where he will play for a very lower Bundesliga team or a Paderborn with Uwe.
Yeah, Paderborn need to get promoted. He'd go play with the BFG. How about that?
And he will put that ball on their head every day of the week, and that will be a great time. And I would be happy to see it. But Adam, question in the chat for you, and I'm glad Mikey asked it because I was going to ask it. How are you now feeling about the much maligned Darren Burn? He seems a lot more comfortable on the ball now compared to a few weeks ago. Goal today, played a part in that McAllister goal, the second one. As you said, he drove forward very well. Got brutally fouled. I'm surprised they allowed the play to go on. Thank God they did. What are your thoughts on Dan Burn?
Yes, good question. And yes, I do like giving Dan Burns some crap. He has been very, very good. He was outstanding versus Chelsea. And again, I thought his plaudits against Brentford were a little bit of a reach, but I understand it. But no, I mean, I can't argue with it. Do I still think he's the weakest of our central defensive group? Maybe not. I honestly maybe would rather see him than Duffy now. And I think we've potentially seen that a little bit of a switch over recently. Depending on when Dunk comes back, I'm going to be really interested to see who starts in that three pairing when we play with three centre backs, because you have to assume when everyone's fit and healthy, which is rare, Lamptey's obviously going to be right wing back, but Veltman's been really, really good too. So where does Veltman fit into this? Is he your sort of sub that comes in either for Lamptey and someone in the centre back grouping? Are you playing Dunk, Webster, and Burn, or are you playing Dunk, Webster, and Duffy? Nice problem to have. But I think he's started to mean that you ask these questions now, whereas at the start of the season, Burn was well and truly fourth, fifth choice.
Yeah, I agree with you on Brentford. He man of the match, an inform on FIFA. I didn't understand any of that. He was fine, just fine for me. Last two games, as you said, I think he's been just absolutely outstanding. He has just really raised his game massively again. For me, why would Veltman not be at centre half? Would you not want to play Veltman at centre half on that right hand side, Webster on the left, Dunk in the middle, or Dunk on the left and Webster in the middle as that back three?
You certainly could. You obviously lose a little bit of height, and it then means if Lamptey does now, I guess you just move him out and bring on a central defender. So yeah, you could do that. But I think that's the path for the future, right? Because how long is Duffy going to be at the club for going on? And again, these are the types of questions with Gross, with Duffy, as you start to become a team that is not now, let's not look back on this, touch wood, and regret saying it, but if you start to have higher aspirations than just survival in the Premier League, you start to think about which players are no longer necessarily the right fit for the club based on those aspirations. That's players like Gross. That's players like Duffy. Veltman's definitely suitable for that next level. Definitely. We've talked about that.
So this is where it gets really interesting, really, because talking of transfer window, I don't want to go too deep into it because we've got so much to talk about next week for it, with the return of Craig as well. Maybe if we lose to West Brom, he may well be. If we lose to West Brom, he may be in trouble here. But that we have five players, I believe, who are out of contract according to Sport Track, and they are quite good at tracking the expiration dates. And they are Jurgen Locadia, definitely gone. Danny Welbeck got that extra year. Tudor Baluta, who never really made it happen. Billy Arca, who is supposedly coming back this month for the first time ever. He is out of contract at the end of this year. And Pascal Gross. Yeah. So there's your 5. Tudor's definitely
worry about any of that, do you?
No, not really. I think the only one you have to question is Billy Arca, really, if he comes back and it actually looks like he may have something. He's only 23. if he's legally allowed to play here now and he can sort his attitude out, because I know he's a bit of a wildfire in wherever he's playing over there, Colombia or Venezuela or something. 2023, though, is going to be the transitional year for this club if we go ahead and continue to push up the table. In 2023, there's a long list, so I'll try and be as quick as I can. 2023 out of contract names here: Adam Lallana, Shane Duffy, Andone, Mope, Trossard, Bissouma, McAllister, Veltman, Byrne, Malumbi, Steele, Clark, Van Heck, Ostergaard.
Yeah, I don't love that.
It's a lot of work to be done behind the scenes at this club, regardless of incomings and outgoings, just to get those players signed back up if they need to get them in.
Sounds like we need a
That's
capable
lot of
technical director, really, to deal with some of that.
Yeah, it does. It does. But that's a lot of big names on that list. We'll see.
Well, I think thankfully for 2023 contracts. Wait, have we talked about? Yeah, we did mention it. Yeah, but I think you worry less about some of those players because those will get figured out and resolved in the tail end of the year next year. Now, though, I think this is where the expectations need to be met and managed for the fan base as we start to demand that extra body to come in with the cliche talk about another striker. This group of technical directors, owners, and managers that are looking to bring in players aren't now looking to bring in players for survival in the Premier League. They're looking to bring in players that help us take that next step and start meaning that we become a top half of the Premier League type side. That means that the laundry list of players that you maybe were targeting before might not necessarily be the same set that you were targeting today and January and then in summer transfer window. It's just something to be aware of because that list is now different and the demands are different financially.
Yeah, and the competition is different.
Yes.
Because we've now got some teams that have been known to be willing to spend in the past that may well not have spent this month or in the summer. Palace, key example. Villa, who are struggling, and despite having spent a lot of money, they will just throw more at it. The obvious in Newcastle. West Ham continuing to do very well. These are all teams that, if they'd have had a different season about them, say Villa were sat where we were in 8th, they probably don't even think about making any signings in this next month. With the way they are now, they could be stupid and start throwing money around, and so on and so forth. So we've got a lot of work to do. I think regardless of where we are in the table, if the club decide that Danny Welbeck is probably not going to be kept on, I think you probably should go ahead and try and replace him this month. Despite the fact that I want a striker anyway, but if you're going to go for it, give that player 6 months to bed in. If you're going to sign a smaller, like a lesser known player, if you're not going to bring in Romelu Lukaku and you're going to go a little bit lower, let them come in and bed in for that 6 months. That's important to get, I think.
Well, they might look at a different Belgian in that regard, right? As in at USG. And I think that's then when you start to look at there's already been talks and articles out about how USG don't want to, well, obviously they're not going to say they do, but don't want to give up any of their well-performing players now because they're on a title push, which they never expected prior to this point. So I think, yes, there might be a want to bring someone in. I think there's always been a want. I just don't know whether you might be able to get one of those players in the summer once the season's all said and done. But, Undav they're not going to be like, oh, yeah, go on, off you go.
Yeah. I think your obvious names out there, your Brereton Diaz's and others are going to be the ones you're going to be looking at. Blackburn are on a hell of a run, but they also, could very quickly find themselves falling through the playoff places regardless.
Yeah, they sell their best player, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're sat in second place, but they are Fulham have 2 games in hand on them. So if they just draw one of those, they're back into the playoffs. Are Blackburn a team that would rather sell that asset or not? We chose not to with Dale Stevens as an example, when Burnley were coming in for him pretty heavily that summer. But there's plenty who will sell their best assets if the money is right, simply to be able to keep themselves profitable and movement.
20 goals for him, Brereton Diaz, already. That's a hard... His price tag's got to be just brutal.
I think the only retaliation you're going to get from that, from a Tony Bloom who's going in for a player like that, he will point to your Mitrovic and Solanke, who are first and third in that top scorer table, and go, those two can't do it in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So why am I going to spend 40 million on another one that could not? I'll give you 20 based on what he could do. And it'll be whether Blackburn want to commit to that or not. We'll see.
It's hard. It's very hard to say, because part of them, you can imagine them going, well, we don't even get we don't entertain Premier League football if we give up this player. But again, yeah, there's others. It would be interesting to bring a player like him in, because it rounds out a lot of our sort of South American contingent that we're building in the club as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Especially if we get Casado coming in a year or so, who, as we talked about before, really needs to get out of the bookending the Belgian Jupiler Pro League with USG.
Big time.
We'll see. But I will say, though, looking at the bench that we had today, things changed quickly. But it was a good bench. We still got Lewis Dunk to come back, but we had Duffy on that who was starting centre back for us, one of our best performing players at the start of this season. Let's not forget Tarek Lamptey, Steven Alzate, again South American connection, back from injury, got his first few minutes last week against Chelsea. Pascal Gross, he's more than capable of coming in. Jakob Moda, Solly March, Taylor Richards, and Danny Welbeck. That's not bad.
Not at all. Not
with
at all.
Basuma going, you've got decentish. Again, no one replaces him, but decent coverage there. Again, what I'm worried about is the article that Andy Naylor put out this week that said something along the lines of Brighton not under pressure to sign striker with Welbeck coming back. And we know that Naylor's a bit of a mouthpiece. He's fed his information from people in the club, and the articles come out accordingly. They might not be bringing someone in.
I think the argument to that is that they're also not going to say they're on the lookout.
Sure.
Which is one of those things that they will come out and say.
We just signed that Polish lad for 8 million as well, didn't we?
Just about to, yeah, I think so. Who I think is also going to be going on loan to USG, which why it may take a couple of days to get the announcement out, because they may.
Are we their feeder club now? What's going on?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because they were saying that they don't want Brighton and USG to become that kind of symbiotic relationship, but it has been for years already. So, not sure where that's going to come from. I mean, if you've got 3 Premier League clubs coming in for Van Zier, who are mid-table teams, Tony isn't going to sell them to, he isn't going to sell them to Palace and to
right.
Everton even. If he can do himself a deal that works out best for both clubs and then comes to us, that's the way the world works. That's how it's worked for a long time. It just makes a change that we're getting the benefits of that.
It's an honest to good monopoly. It's no problem on some players. But again, the only thing that gave us pause, right, was that was Connolly. Was Connolly going? Do you give up Connolly if no one's, because Danny's good for his injuries. We know that. It's only one crocked Danny Welbeck, and suddenly you got no one that plays up front.
Yep.
That's not okay. So maybe we'll see. It's going to be an interesting month. It really will, especially as you say. What do sides around us do? because everyone's going to be clamoring to strengthen. No one's happy with their squad in the Premier League right now, apart from Manchester City, and even they don't have a striker.
And they don't have an out striker.
So you could argue no one is happy with their current lot. So there's going to be some movement. And if we can be a part of some of that positive aspect of that movement, then great. I think my fingers are crossed that we don't get any crazy offers for any of our players. Because
I think that's all we can hope for, really.
You look at someone like Basuma, a side that needs that kind of midfielder at the upper echelons of the table, and they look and go, well, this guy's not tied in European football competition because he doesn't play in it with Brighton. Legal trouble sorted out. Let's say he performs well at the AFCON. Contract isn't particularly long left on it. Maybe we pounce now. Let's make Tony an offer he can't refuse. And then, let's not get into that situation.
And I mean, you even look abroad. Your Barcelona's.
I got no money anymore. Ferran Torres, that was all of it.
Well, yeah, that's true. But those sort of teams that are building back up around those divisions, Basuma would definitely want to have a look at those. Why wouldn't he? So we'll just have to wait and see, I think. But yeah, I mean, he's off to Mali now, so we won't see much of him for the next month. The AFCON is always good for 2 or 3 players coming out to African media and saying stuff they would never have dreamt of saying in the UK. Lots of clubs' transfer policies have changed overnight with some of the way their players have come out and said something at the AFCON. Just across Europe in general, you'll every now and again have some random player come out who plays for, Barcelona or whatever, and come out and say, actually, yeah, I'd love to go to England. And 2 weeks later, they're in England because everyone's like, oh, shit, would you? Boom, on the phone. So we'll see. Hopefully he's not one of those people who's mouthing off over in wherever they're hosting it this year.
Yeah, I don't see it. I also think the club's done good by him. We know that he's been happy here. We know that he loves the role that he's got. Depending on whatever comes out about this legal situation, we know that the club he's been back in he's a couple of games he was on the bench. Outside of that, he's been fully in the team. The club, there's been no leaks about anything. He's in a good spot. But again, bigger club comes a calling, opens the checkbook up. Who knows? We just got to hope we keep him as long as possible. But again, this is why we bring this out. Everyone's talking about we want to bring the striker. Then every other clubs are looking at our best players and saying, "Oh, we'd love to get them now." So let's not don't just focus on what we could bring in. Just focus on keeping some of the players too. A little too early for Lamptey and Cucurella, obviously, and hopefully someone like a Trossard. But we need to keep eyes on Basuma for sure.
Yeah, just the contract length in alone would be enough to scare people away from Cucurella and Lamptey. What's the point? And I mean, I saw some people online saying like, oh, well, Lamptey's ex-Chelsea, they're desperately in need of wing-backs. Maybe they'll come in for him. They can go sign Livramento, who's been electric for 6 months, for £20-odd million. Chelsea are absolutely rich enough and dumb enough to just consider it a £25 million 6-month loan. Why wouldn't they? Because they'd be paying more for Tarek.
Yeah, true. I mean, you've got Spurs. You've got. I don't know if you watched Emerson Royale attempt to cross the ball 500 times the other day. Yesterday, he's appalling. There's lots of sides that would clamour for, and this is the fun conversation to have. There are those 4 or 5 players that we have that top sides would happily have in their teams. Have. We're not just saying that because we're indoctrinated Kool-Aid drinking fans. Like Basuma would start for Manchester United.
I mean, I think I've said it for 2 years on here, and I've said it with you lot too, and you all said it without me even saying anything. Like just now, I cannot believe there hasn't been more newspaper rumors of Man United and Basuma.
It's weird
because it's the most obvious. It's too obvious. They are one really good holding presence midfielder away from becoming a perennial top 4 side with a push to the top title challenge away.
He's exactly what they need.
You never hear his name.
It's weird.
In fact, you don't even hear any of those midfield position players being put out there. It's Ronaldo, it's Sancho. It's these attacking players that are just not needed yet.
Well, because they normally make dumb
back
decisions,
line
and
now.
this would be a good decision. So that's
That's
probably why
true.
it's not been
Yeah.
talked about.
That's
Like,
true.
well, surely they wouldn't do this.
Yeah, it's too obvious.
It
Don't
makes
even
way
waste
too
our
much
time with it.
sense. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's everything. We've smashed out a long one today. So plenty for everyone to listen to between now and next week. Considering you won't have a podcast for a whole week. It's a long time. For you guys, considering you just 3 in a week, pretty much.
Yeah. So they're probably
and,
sick of
yeah.
us.
The glorious West Bromwich Albion next. Battle of the Albions is back on. I'm not really bothered, to be honest. If we were playing a much smaller side, I'd be more interested because I would expect us to play a lot of young lads, and I'd like to see some of those players play. Your Fergusons, especially, players like that. I can't imagine he's going to get a run out against West Brom. I suspect he'll be playing a lot of the players that are on the bench today, for example.
Yeah, and that's fine. Start
like
March,
that.
start Duffy, switch the keepers around. Yeah.
I think,
I agree.
yeah. And to me, like, that is fine, but I'm not too interested. I know what they're about. That's my only thing. I would love to see what Evan Ferguson does against Rochdale. I know he's not even going to play against West Brom, for example. So yeah, we'll see. And then just a small matter of Crystal Palace the following week. So we'll see.
On a Friday, is it? Friday night, isn't it?
Yeah, Friday night.
Friday night lights.
It's always a dodgy time, isn't it? Because the police always request something strange for the Palace games. So.
Oh, that's right. So Mr. Everly in the chat, the West Brom just signed that Orlando City player, didn't they?
Yeah, Daryl DK.
Yeah.
4.5-year deal as well. So, same manager who brought him over the first time. Ishmael is now at West Brom. He got him in at Barnsley. He was Barnsley's manager at the time. So
yeah,
he knows how to use him. We'll see.
There you go.
But that's all from us. So we will speak to you next week with the possible return of Craig, depending on if we've allowed him to return or not, given the run we're on. So we will speak to you all next week.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Appreciate it.
Peace.